Welcome back, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, and hopefully those of you that are online are able to hear. So this session is going to cover actually a question that came out of the last session, which is how to merge multiple sections into a single course. Leading this session will be Sally Hughes from the Center for Teaching Excellence, and assisting will be Martin Quinn from the LMS support team. So Martin will be coming around and answering any questions you might have. This session, like the others, is designed to allow you to work as the presentation is going on, so that if you do have sections you want to merge, you should be able to work through that process. I will also be monitoring the chat and answering any questions that pop up there and relaying them on to the larger audience as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Sally.
I'm going to try to use, can you hear me okay? CJ, let me know if the chat says no. Okay. So welcome. Obviously this session is on merging multiple sections into a single course. So really what we're going to address here is if you have multiple sections of the same course, what is the process for bringing those all into one course shell and the considerations before you make that decision to do so. So our objectives for today is to locate and utilize the appropriate start of semester checklist, identify the process for merging courses, stacked courses, and courses with different instructors in ORCA. And I'll talk more about ORCA in just a second. Also, we want you to be able to distinguish between course associate roles and the TrainTraq training requirements of each in ORCA. So what is ORCA? ORCA is a program that was developed locally by Texas A&M. It stands for Online Request Course Administration. And the website for ORCA is orca.tamu.edu. It's a pretty easy one. And basically what ORCA does is it allows you to do any of the things you see listed here on the screenshot. You can look at your courses, excuse me, you can request combined courses, request a duplicate course, look at your enrollments. And then we also have some other options here, such as editing some settings, viewing communities. All of these things can be done through ORCA. So I mentioned in the session objectives that we wanted you to be able to access the start of semester checklist. It's updated. There are two versions of it, one for brand new faculty or faculty who are new to Canvas, and one for returning faculty. The new to Canvas or the new faculty starts with getting your syllabus set up, but one of the steps in that checklist is to decide whether you wish to merge your courses, and if so, the process for doing that. So one thing you need to know about merging courses is A&M does have a deadline to do that. And that information is listed on the LMS website. There's also a TextAg here linked. CJ, any chance you could put that link in the chat? CJ's going to put that link in the chat. So
yes, I'll put it in the chat.
All right. So you have to decide, is your course a candidate for a merger? And if so, which category best describes it? So on the screen here, you will see 4 different types of merging situations. One is one instructor who has multiple sections of the same course. That would be a perfect candidate for merging courses. What that does is it allows you to be more efficient in your work within Canvas. You don't have to go to 4 different places, 4 different course shells to do the course management type tasks like posting announcements and such. If your courses are all merged, they will occur in one merged shell. And that way you can be more efficient in terms of, okay, I want to send an announcement. Well, you can send an announcement once to all 4 sections instead of going to each section and doing a separate announcement. Another example of a merged course that would work well are stacked courses with the same instructor. So stacked courses are essentially 2 different types of courses but they have the same content. So you might have an honors course and a regular course, or you might have an undergraduate course and a graduate course. And so that's an example of a stacked course where they're at different levels. Stacked courses with different instructors from the same department can also be merged. That's a little bit more of an extra step, but it can be done through ORCA. And then finally, cross-listed courses. So that is essentially a course that covers different content areas. And so you want 2 different faculty members in that course co-teaching. And there's some other situations where that might also be appropriate. That's considered cross-listed courses. So let's start with the stacked courses, same instructor. So there are both written instructions on how to do this and video instructions. And I'm hoping CJ will put those in the chat for us.
Yes, those in the chat. Also, we do have a question from the chat. Good question. How do you handle the different times and locations in the syllabus of the merge section?
That's a great question. Anybody have an answer? Martin, what do people normally do for that?
Hopefully y'all can hear me on Zoom here, but if you have different times in the syllabus, let's say that they're just a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday and Friday section, you can still merge them. And then most of the time what we've seen is they just keep the same deadline or the same sort of time from and until for the assignment and quiz. So you can actually kind of rethink how you would do this. Since it's out of the class and it's online, you can open up the time period and just leave it open for a few days for everybody in your course to go in and participate. You're not held to having to keep an assignment or a quiz on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule or a Wednesday, Friday schedule. You can set your own dates and times for everybody. If you want to hold each time section, you can do that within the assignment and quiz too. So let's say you have a Tuesday, Thursday class and you want to give them a specific deadline. You want to give this other section a different deadline. You can go into that assignment and change the sections and give each section a different deadline. And if you have questions, you can email support@instructure.com on how to do that. And Perfect. They can assist you, or we can assist you if they can.
And putting that on the syllabus, what I would do is I would just articulate 2 different sections in terms of when the class meets, so that your syllabus might include information for two separate sections identified by the section number. Did you have anything else to add?
Kristen, that was a fantastic question. Hopefully we answered that. If you didn't, please follow up in the chat and we will be happy to answer anything else associated with that.
Thank you. Okay, so looking at when stacked courses should or could be combined or merged, you want to have, it would be the same process as multiple sections of the same person. It can combine undergrad and grad courses. You want to be very careful as you are going through grading processes. As Martin mentioned, there's an issue sometimes with times of when the course meets. You could open that up and broadly have a more general deadline for assignments. But if you're going to have different times, make sure you clearly articulate that to your students. And you also may have different levels of course or of assignments. So a graduate and a graduate course may have 2 different but similar assignments. And so there are ways that you can do that within Canvas as well. All right, multiple sections, same instructor. The IOR, which stands for Instructor of Record, must complete that request through ORCA. My understanding is that a academic liaison can also do that.
That's correct. An academic liaison, they're individuals who are designated as your kind of representative from where you are at in the college. So each one might have you could have, I think, up to 2 or 3 maybe, but you might have 1, you might have 2. It just depends on the department and college you're with. Also, instructor of record, that's the term we use to identify that you're a primary instructor for the course. So if you are listed as the primary instructor of record in Howdy, you should be able to go into ORCA and see these sections that you're assigned to as the primary instructor to make merge requests.
Thank you, Martin. So there's one of the things that you want to consider also is what the naming convention will be for this new merged course. You obviously want to include, you know, the course name and number. It is also a good idea to include the sections in that name so that students will know that they are in the correct place. Because if they know they're in section 502 of chemistry 119 and they don't see that in the name, they're going to think they're in the wrong course section. And again, there are written instructions and a slideshow, a how-to slideshow, and even some video instructions listed in hopefully the chat. CJ's going to take care of that for me. But, sorry, I'm putting you to work.
No, that's good. Yes, I've added also the list of academic liaisons to the chat as well. So there are some written instructions, video instructions, and the academic liaison list is there as well now.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so this is a different situation. Stacked courses, different instructors, same department. Okay, so again, the instructor of record must complete this. There are two options here. So the first option, you can contact your academic liaison, list all the course sections that are supposed to be merged. That means your subject, the course, and the section number, and what you want the new title of that stacked course to show, that merged course. Alternatively, the second option is to submit a request to the Canvas support team here at A&M. You will email support@instructor.com, but also include written consent of all instructors involved or the department head's written consent. And in the body of the email, the details of the courses that are supposed to be combined. In the subject line, include escalate directly to Canvas TAMU support or Canvas Tier 2 support at TAMU. Cross-listed courses are courses that occur in different departments. Or colleges, the instructor of record must complete this request. And again, it's primarily for cross-college courses. There must be written consent from all the instructors, and this is going to be included in that email to support@instructor.com. Written consent from all instructors or the department head's written consent. And correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but it must be the department head from one of the content areas, or do you need both? Because this is the cross colleges.
To be technical, you probably should have the permission from both sides of the fence. So if it's an English professor and a history professor, as long as we have somebody above them with their permission to merge courses, if they can't apply, then that's really what we need.
Okay. And then again, you have to articulate what you want the title to be for this cross-listed course. Determine the sub-account where the new course will reside.
If I can chime in there, Sally, one thing about that came up in our Friday sessions. The sub-account where it resides also determines the third-party tools. So if there's a third-party tool that you want to use that is in
History only.
Yeah, it is in history only, then you want to make sure it's merged into that particular into that department or that column.
Good consideration.
So that is something that came up in Friday. I mean, as a question in Friday, it was a great question.
Yeah. So this request is in the form of an email to support@instructor.com, but the tier 1 support@instructor can't do this. So in your subject line, please escalate directly to Canvas support@TAMU. And then in the body of your email, clearly articulate what courses you want merged and provide the proper authorization, whether that's all the instructors' written consent or the department heads.
Sally, if I may real quick, also your academic liaison, they can make this request too. So if we see it come from the academic liaison, they're a green lighted individual for your department for us to go ahead and just do it.
Okay.
So you can ask them to.
Perfect. So we have a time here, a little work time. We'd like you to go ahead and log into the ORCA system. It's orca.tamu.edu. And if you know you have a course merge you're planning to make, you can go ahead and do that while you have us here to help. if something should come up that you didn't expect. So I'm going to just put a little timer here for about 2 minutes. Question?
Right, so my question is, I have a stacked grad and undergrad, and the undergrad has 4 sections with 4 labs. The labs are different numbers, and so what is the best practice? I don't want to be honest.
Yeah, so that might be.
Sorry, I just want to repeat for everyone online. The question was, an undergraduate and a graduate course, and the undergraduate course has 4 different lab sections. What's the best practice?
What we've seen in the case where we've seen like chemistry and other sorts of schools that have labs associated with their lecture. Well, it kind of depends on your thought process behind it, and each school may handle this a little bit differently. But what we've seen is they'll take the lecture sections and they'll combine them. And then in ORCA, you can create what's called a duplicate course. And the duplicate, what it does is it copies the enrollments from that section and it separates them into its own brand new course section. And so what we've done, for example, let's say it's 101 through 110. And all the 101 through 110 have a lecture and a lab. We'll take the 101 and 110 and we'll combine that for lecture, and then we'll create separate copies or duplicate courses for each one and combine those as the instructors want. So let's say they want 101 through 105 combined into one lab, and then 106 to 110 combined in a separate lab. We can do that. And so when the students log in, they'll see your lecture course, and then they'll see a lab course, and they'll know which one to log into. And oftentimes you title it 101 through 105 lab or something along those lines, just to kind of give them a key indicator as to which course they're logging into. Does that kind of answer your question? And we can assist with that. Oh, maybe I didn't understand the question then. So, okay.
Does the graduate course have a lab?
I have a meeting today.
Okay, so if it has a lab, I'm not sure if you would want to combine that lab with the undergraduate labs, but if the lecture is essentially the same content, you could combine the lecture portion of the graduate course with the lecture portion of the undergraduate for a stacked course.
And the grading, same grade.
There is a way to distinguish, stacked course grading. CJ?
So this is a unique situation. Give a stack graduate. I lose the mic. There we go. You give a stack graduate, undergraduate course. The grading, the solution is typically to make the course work 200%. But 100% is for the undergraduate assignments and 100% is for the graduate assignments. So if you have assignment groups, which if you're not familiar with those, we'll talk about them later today. You'll have assignment groups just for graduates and just for undergraduates. And then the total will be 100 for each of those.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we have actually a kind of a comparison chart to kind of give you an idea on if your
Look at that in a second.
your courses are going to be in your favor to merge or not. So in some cases, if the content's a lot different, I mean, if the content might be the same, but the grading's different and all that, you may as well just keep them separate. It might be in your best interest to keep the graduate and undergraduate separate unless they're going to be working together a lot in the course. So that might be something to consider. And I think Sally's going to touch on that. There's just a chart we have to kind of help you figure out are my sections worth merging, so I think Sally will.
So one thing that hasn't come up yet, and either one of you can pipe in on this. What is the impact when you merge a very high number of courses in terms of loading speed and making it useful for the faculty member?
Yeah, so if you have a lot of students, unfortunately, it could cause a longer load time for the grade book. That would be something to consider is if I have 2,000, 3,000 students, you need to be aware that the loading the grade book itself will take time. I have seen it load. but I have to have a couple cups of coffee before it actually fully loads, unfortunately. So, or sit back and kind of maybe catch up on a show. But it will load eventually, but it will take some time for large sections.
That can impact your decision making if you have a lot of
Right.
students. Yeah.
Okay, did you have any questions?
No. I think it's just a-
Another question, I know this is gonna be a Martin question for sure. This is from the chat. I have previously merged two sections stacked in ORCA. This week, we added a new section for this course. How can I add this section to the previously combined course?
So, CJ, I just want to make sure I understand. So they have a already combined course, and then there's a section they want to add to that. Is that right? Just to paraphrase.
Yes, that is correct. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. That's my understanding. You have already merged the courses. A section has been added and you want to add that to the merged courses.
Yeah. So
That's correct.
okay, so yeah, we can do that, and that actually won't affect anything. It's a simple procedure that our team can go in using an admin access to ORCA, and we can take that section and add it to the combined section. But a ticket's going to have to be put in for us to do that, request to do that. All we'll need is the name of the combined section and the section that you want added to it, and we can go do that for you.
So a simple email from him with that information and escalate to Canvas at TAMU.
Yeah, that's right. So just email support@instructure.com and just say in your request, please forward to the local Canvas tier 2 team, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Another question from the chat. Kristen's, we checked the enrollment. Sorry, Kristen, could you elaborate on that question a little bit, please, as to what checking that against the enrollment, I assume, when the course is merged, but just to verify that's in fact what you mean. Oh, yes, before combining, check the enrollment and to avoid the large gradebook issue that Martin mentioned. Yes, I would recommend that to see how many students you have. Howdy would be the best place to check that, correct, Martin, to make sure you have a total amongst all your sections that would be a candidate for merging.
Yeah, so if I was considering this and wanted to check the amount of enrollments, that's a great point. So yeah, look in Howdy, you should have access to your roster, which should give you an idea of how many students are in each section. That's right.
And the follow-up from Kristen, how large is too large? Where do we start to stack gradebook issue? I want to say it's like 750, 1,000. We've started to see that. I mean, I know 2,000 for sure, but I don't think there's a firm number. I know around 2,000 we've seen it, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it also depends on how many assignments you have in your grade book.
Yeah, so you have it right. You have it. So if you think about it, and so the more you start adding, as far as assignments and quizzes and enrollments, the higher the probability is that it's going to take a longer time for it to load within the gradebook itself. So consider that if you have 1 or 2 assignments, maybe you just have a big project for the whole course for your whole semester, it will probably load quicker, even if there's a large amount of students, than as opposed to if there are multiple assignments and multiple assessments and you have 1,000 students. We've tried to get a number. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to extract one, but we've just noticed from our own observation that if you start getting into, like, I would say CJ has a pretty good guess there, 750 or above, you might start seeing slower load times just from our own observations. So we've tried to ask a little bit about that, but unfortunately, we have to just give you kind of what we've noticed on that in that regard. Definitely when you get to 1,000, you should expect longer load times. So it all just depends.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes. And Kristen, follow up again. You have 288 sections. That should be fine. We see grade books of that size all the time. It's really, like Martin said, when you get up over 1,000, 2,000, that's when we start to see the issues. But 288, you shouldn't even notice that load time. It should be almost instantaneous.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next section here, and this is where we have course associate roles. Suppose you want to have additional people in your course. Maybe you have a very research heavy course undergrad and you want to add a librarian to your course, or you have these other people, other roles that you want to add, such as course designer, grader, grade submitter. Anyone that you are adding to your course can be enrolled via ORCA using that same tool, but there are some additional considerations. We want to make sure that every person that's being added to your course has the required training. And there are two different trainings that are required. One is PARPA, because they will have access to who, in terms of students, are in the course. And one is the information security awareness training. Both of those are available within TrainTraq, and I'll show you where in just a moment. And additionally, we want to make sure that sometimes we have a non-employee who needs to be added for whatever reason. There is a separate procedure for them as well.
Sorry to interrupt, Sally, we had a question come in right after the last slide. Just to confirm, there is nothing that needs to be taken care of in Howdy when courses are merged in Canvas, correct?
There's a question up here too, when you're done that.
Yes, so the way that it works is that the feeds, the enrollment feeds from Howdy go to Canvas, the Canvas side of things, and Canvas will look at that. And let's say you have freshmen and they don't have accounts in Canvas yet, it will automatically create accounts for those students and enroll them in the right sections. In a perfect world, that's kind of just, there's a lot more to that, but the feeds come over from Howdy and go into Canvas. So yeah, you really don't need to do anything in Howdy other than make sure you're listed as the primary instructor for the correct courses. And going on to our other question here in the room.
Are there deadlines for adding those course associates, or can they be added at any time?
I don't think there's deadlines for adding course associates, is there?
There are not deadlines that I'm aware of. So there's two ways to do that. You can do that in Howdy. You can have, like, say, a person in your department who has access to the student information system, put those people into your course.
You're
that
stealing
way.
my thunder, Martin.
Do what?
You're stealing my thunder.
Yes. All right, just kidding. No, tell me when to
Okay,
stop.
we'll get there.
All right.
We'll get to that
Pause that,
information in
pause
just a
that,
second.
not to get ahead of ourselves here.
Just to make sure
And then
everybody's
David behind the
for
curtain.
the question, are there deadlines for adding those course associate roles? And no, there are not at this point. So we mentioned just a second ago that any course associate that you have added to your course has to complete required training. And if they do it within TrainTraq, then we should be able to pull that information, correct? Yes. Okay. And then, so there's two different trainings, and notice it says all course associate roles must complete that. This is a non-negotiable. We would be in violation of federal law if we just let anyone into a college course. So FERPA training in TrainTraq is TrainTraq number 11012. It's on the screen. The other one is the information security awareness, and that's TrainTraq number 3001. And if possible, use NetID or SSO credentials to complete the training. Now, obviously, if you're a new faculty, maybe you don't have your NetID yet. It's important for you to get this training, and the most ideal process is if you get your NetID or SSO credentials and then log into TrainTraq and get that done. It requires the least amount of extra work within the process. There are instructions on how to do this and a slideshow that gives you how to step-by-step instructions. And we have, CJ's going to put those in the chat for us. So there's two options on how to add those course associate roles. You can do it via Compass. You would contact your department scheduler and get their assistance in doing that, or you can do it via ORCA. If you're doing it via ORCA, keep in mind that training is required. You may have to upload a PDF of a certificate as proof. And this can also be used for removing or changing a role. Anything you want to add, Martin?
I don't think so. As long as you're logging in, just to reiterate, use your NetID and NetID password. That we'll have individuals sometimes who are students, but they want to enroll them into a separate section to help as a TA. They just need to make sure they're taking the training with their NetID and NetID password. So when they log in, they should now be able to do that. In the past, they couldn't, but now they can. And it
Perfect.
should sync automatically.
So we're gonna take a moment to at least explore that area in ORCA. So log into ORCA and find the area where you can add a course associate. This screenshot here kind of shows you what it would look like in adding a teaching assistant or another course associate role. So I'll give you a few minutes to explore that area of ORCA.